Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? I think we are at home stretch. My name is Sunil Saxena. I'm with John Hancock.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Ankit Sharma. I'm a senior full-stack engineer with John Hancock.
Both of us will walk all of us through today with our journey, what we've been doing in past, I would say 12 to 14 months, give or take. A little bit about introductions. As I said, my name is Sunil Saxena. I'm a senior director with John Hancock. It's been 2 years. Before that, I was in higher ed, working in Cambridge for approximately 20 years. Experience with a lot of data, application delivery, big data, and now I'm involved in microservices project delivery. So it's been an exciting journey so far, and I'm going to share some of that with you today. As Ankit said, Ankit is one of our full stack engineers very much involved in this project. We're going to cover today in 2 phases. I'll cover some of the non-technical stuff or the soft learnings, what we have done, so that should benefit folks who are looking to execute similar projects. And Ankit's going to walk us through more on technology side, what have we implemented during this journey. So hopefully that should clarify a few of the doubts we have. Let's talk about our company a little bit. We both are from Manulife, John Hancock. It's a global company, as you can see. We have a big presence in Asia, about 16,000 employees. Canada, we have about 12,900 or so. It's a very old company. US, about 6,000. As you can see, we were formed in 1800. So as you can imagine, it's a lot of legacy involved. So that will help few of the connections to make why we are or why we were what we were and how fast we are developing. That said, before we put in the agendas or the review, I want to share some of the strategic goals. Those are not only related to this project, but across Manulife and John Hancock, what we are trying to do and transform a company which is mostly in insurance and financial space into a technology company or more or less digitize our presence over the web. We want to change over time and make it faster to market, which I think we have heard enough in the last 3 or 4 days from various keynotes and in sessions. That's a requirement. We are adopting agile, which is very important for most of our the way we are doing projects. I think it's a proven fact that agile's working with faster time to market works very well together, and we'll walk you through a little bit how we have transformed or how we are transforming into that. We are also moving from service-oriented architecture, which is kind of the topic for today's talk, and we'll give you some more details about it, into microservices. And Pivotal plays a major role with that, and we'll cover it. And of course, the last but not the least is the automation. All of the things we talk about have lesser value or lesser benefits if we will not automate things. Otherwise, we go back into the old ways of doing things and call it as a new way. So automation is the key, and we'll definitely cover that, how we have achieved this and what were the hurdles while we were doing that. With that, let me start with the project overview. I call it a project. It's more or less a journey. It's not a single application we are talking about. I'm going to cover what the state of the project or the journey was. We will also cover where we started, means the baseline before we started, what we were dealing with about a year, 14 months back. Together with corporate, our sponsors, and our team, we defined exactly where we are headed and what we are trying to achieve, or you can call them the project goals. Then I'm going to walk you through with Ankit where we are now. And as all of us agreed, this is a never-ending journey. You always have to keep improving things and keep going. But I'll call it a milestone where we are now, and I'm going to share with you what that milestone is. Seems like at an odd place, but CI/CD pipeline, I want to touch base on this through Ankit, exactly what we are doing in that space. A lot of us who are in this journey on their own companies, I feel we struggle a lot when it comes to automation through pipelines. So we'll talk a little about that, what we have done. Again, today's agenda, our goal is to share with you where we started in a monolith SOA, service architecture space, and what we modernized till date and what we have changed, and move towards a total microservices architecture space. So that's the goal for this today, so that you guys can take away a little bit of information from our lessons learned, as well as connect some of the challenges you guys may be facing. With that, let's jump on to our project, what it was and where we started. The goal for us, or the definition we defined, is there were about 80 plus services, all running in the enterprise service bus or service-oriented architecture. These services were from A to B, most of them covered 2 or 3 operations. It's very specific ask for these services, and they've been in the monolith fashion created under service-oriented architecture. Using a platform, third-party vendor tool platform, and it has its pluses and minuses. Everything was on-prem. And we were asked, let's retire that platform. So retire that platform doesn't mean just move the services to microservices, but really to get rid of that platform, which should result into cost savings. Ultimately, we all know that cost saving is a pretty motivating factor. We were also asked, if you remember from the strategic goals, that we need to modernize our platform and get towards faster delivery, make sure the automation can serve, and we are not into the grind of let's every quarter do 2 releases. So those were pretty much the guiding principles for us before we started. That results, of course, as the slide says, we also need to digitize our platform. We were totally on-prem, we were totally, and I'll walk you through exactly what we were in more details. That said, once we decided, or once we agreed that these are the services we need to migrate, we broke that project, or we decided that we're going to have 2 concurrent phases. A little bit about our industry or about our company, that every company, whether that's an e-commerce or insurance like us, have bread and butter things. For us, it's our customers, it's our policies, it's underwriting, it's an insurance company. So we said these are the area which grow faster, require faster modernization than we need. So we said these are perfect domain-oriented services which we should go the 3 Rs, the famous refactor, re-architecture, and then redesign. So we said that phase, identify these 3 domains, and we're going to do it with, we call it do it right. You can call it anything you like, but more or less, make sure it's not carrying forward anything from the past. Let's figure out the new requirement of these domains. We call it party domain, which is pretty much our customers. And then, of course, policy and underwriting. So those services or those domains were put under do it right. And rest of them, we say, we need to fast track them to cloud, or in this case, our pivotal platform. And we are calling it lift and shift. But let's not get bogged down into the name lift and shift, because once you are on a monolith service-oriented architecture, you just cannot lift and shift to MSA like that. So I'm going to give you a couple of things which we did. Although we call it lift and shift, the service functionality and schema was retained, but we rewrite everything in Spring Boot. We modified those services to handle the new platform offering, like CI/CD pipelines were included. We included the scanning, and the security was changed to, and the endpoints were more industry standard, like REST, and we used some OAuth 2 and Apigee gateways for authentications, which was not the case for the on-prem or the monoliths we were doing. So technically speaking, these two phases of this project were a little different on some term, but the baseline was pretty much same. They all were going on the same platform. They all were using the same automation, which I just mentioned, and on top of that, they all were benefiting from the modernization of our platform. High availability, disaster recovery, all came with it. So please keep that in mind, but then we will differentiate that. So once we have these factors defined for us, we were ready to start our journey. Seems like, okay. So we did our preparation, we packed our things, whatever we need to pack. Of course, the battery chargers and cell phones, but outside that, it was time to press the start button. And the minute we press the start button, you will see what happens, that now all the debt or all the things we have will stand in front of you, because it's not that easy that you press the start button and you are coding in Spring Boot and you're putting your services to day one. So with that, I want to talk about that. You will understand the left thing once I'll explain all these bricks and what was in place, and then you'll say, okay, that makes it, what? You guys were doing this? Our baseline was enterprise service bus, or the SOA architectured services, 80 plus. For this purpose, we had 2 on-prem data centers. Of course, the cost was a factor, and as you remember, that was one of the guiding principles. We were doing local failovers on the local data centers, which were miles apart, but not hundreds of miles. We had a very low deployment frequency, and dev to prod cycles take weeks. Regular waterfall way, good or bad, not a point. And more or less, the biggest challenge at that thing was it's manual checking for every piece of step. And this is not a new thing for any of us. If any of us will think, what are you talking about? Unless you are like low 20 years old and you have not seen anything like this, I'll buy it. But otherwise, all of us have gone through this pain. So when we understand, okay, this is what we are trying to do, and that's hence your left-hand side graphic. That was a what. And what does that mean? So now we know where we were. I hope I gave you a glimpse of what was the baseline, and I also gave you a little bit of glimpse what we were trying to do. So what you see on the screen is that's exactly how the team felt. And I'll talk you through about what the team was or what the team we created in a few slides down. But more or less, it was a pretty uphill task. If I add one more line, we were doing this project with the same resources we had doing our SOA service. So same set of team members were picked to do this architecture and convert. And the reason for that is, of course, we want to make sure we get value out of it so that we don't have to replace our FTEs or the folks. We train them, we learn them, we make sure they understand the whole journey, and then they will be delivering. And fast forward today, those are the guys who are supporting this system, which results into not only soft learnings, but significant cost savings. So with that was an uphill task. We thought that, yes, it is, but the good news is we had a plan. So the plan was, we want to take these services and migrate to the cloud over, of course, Pivotal we are talking about as a platform. We are running on Azure. We want to make sure that in this new delivery, the time to market is not days and weeks, but hopefully in hours and minutes. We were definitely going through an agile adoption. That means before this project, we were not practicing agile. That means, yeah, it's an uphill task. We wanted to make sure that we automate. That, as we said, without that, we learned pretty early that without automation, there's not going to be much benefits coming in our direction. And we also added a few things which were not in place in our SOA application set, like code scanning and code quality. Sounds easy, but that was pretty much, and at that point, it feels like to infinity and beyond. Because if you guys are not used to this, think of Buzz Lightyear. So with that, we started this journey with partnership with our Pivotal folks. We engaged Pivotal Labs for a 12-week engagement where we wanted them to walk us through, and I think I'm not the only one doing the keynotes. Other folks have mentioned that they have done it. I think TD, Ameritrade gentleman, mentioned the same thing. So that resonates with me that we hopefully did the right thing. We moved a subset of our team to Pivotal Labs in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We are from Boston, guys. Actually, Ankit is one of the original members for those folks who we partnered or sent to Cambridge. We got one engineer from Canada, Toronto, and 3 of us from Boston. And we partnered, we went to Pivotal Lab. And the purpose of that is to understand not only the platform offering, but to learn some practices which are battle-tested, industry standard, and change our mindset. I think we all understand learning technology through 4 lines is pretty easy, but changing the mindset is the challenge. And I would say a big part of those 12 weeks were struggle about changing the mindset. And Ankit will walk us through in a minute what were those challenges and where the mindset got stuck. So there, just to highlight few of the things which we practiced, not only learned during those 12 weeks where we were doing pair programming. Our 4 engineers were dedicated and Pivotal assigned 4 of their expert resources to pair with our guys, which was a great experience, I would say. I was there on and off. We also had a full agile practiced process. We were learning what is the real meaning of releasing early and releasing often, and more important, fail fast. Fail often is of course okay, but fail fast. Don't take 3 weeks and 4 weeks and figure out, oops, this is not what we want to do. So Pivotal team helped us understand and see the benefits of that, and Ankit will walk you through some of the practices, how we achieved that. We become pretty proficient, if not expert, using the test-driven development as the TDD. If most of us, I'm pretty sure aware of that. If not, please review it and look. I feel that's a bang for the buck right there. It reduced the testing time and many of the benefits you guys all understand. And if not, Google or see me or Ankit afterwards. Also, we learned the value and the configuration of CI/CD pipelines. We are using Concourse, just for the records, and we will walk you through before end of the session what pipelines we have created in Concourse. So with that, I think time to talk a little bit more exciting thing. I'm going to hand it over to Ankit. And this part of the slides, he wants to talk, he will walk us through exactly what was done during those lab assignments or lab engagement of 12 weeks and what learning. And I'm going to come back when we're going to tell you where we are now. Ankit?
You're going to come back?
I will try.
Okay. All right, so good morning again. And as Neil said, I was one of the engineers who went to Pivotal Labs to work with them for 12 weeks. It was not a straight decision to take ahead and go with. We were initially planning a lot and trying to see how much we can achieve by ourselves and how much can be done if we take help from outside, who would be the best person to go to, and yada, 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 everything done. So we came up with Pivotal as the right choice to go with 12 weeks. So during our time with Pivotal, it was not about just learning new technology, just learning how to go to cloud. The biggest challenge or the biggest difference that made was a change in the mindset. We had a certain mindset with which we had worked almost all our lives and trying to think everything in that way. And changing that and moving away from that took us a bit of time. And trust me, it was a bit challenging in the beginning, but then it all streamlined once we got with the right way. So at Pivotal, we learned to look at things not as one final product. That's how we used to look. So in SOA, and all monolith architecture, we always look at the final product, which is big, which has big schemas, which has big dependencies, which is not faster to market, and which takes a lot of time to test. So our biggest approach or our biggest difference was to make sure that we get away from all of these things and we start looking at things in a smaller way. We learn what is MVP. We also learn what is SVP, which is very important for you to understand that you don't look at a product as something which can deliver value immediately as a whole, but something which can deliver value. So we learn about event storming and architecture planning sessions with Pivotal. So as you see on this board, we have one of our domain designs done, which is of underwriting. So underwriting is like a huge process. It's got multiple services. And when we started working on this, because we already knew what each service was doing, we started putting it on the board. But what we learned was, just take it all out and start looking at them as events. So we started breaking them down to the smallest event that we can think of as a business value, not as a service. And putting the event and then adding the context to the event, then dividing the event down into domain, brought us the knowledge of how we come up with a complete new architecture. So this looks very complicated. And trust me, when I saw the board for the first time that this is what we're going to do, I was thinking probably, I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing on this board. But now if I'm like standing in front of the board, I can make sense of what it does. So this is an exercise where we had the product owners, we had the agile coaches, we had the engineers. As always, we had the business folks involved to take into consideration what value is coming out, and which, if you look at here, looks very complicated. But if I tell you what the final product was after this, you'll be surprised. So this all came down to this. So with the event storming, we learned about Boris diagram and how to map it into APIs, because that's what you eventually want to do. Once you've broken things down into domain, you know the context of how things work out, you come up with this, which is, yes, very less complicated than what we saw before. And this tells you how the service flows, how many APIs you need, and also about the anti-corruption layers that are needed in front of your service. You don't want your service to do everything. Since it's a microservice, we want the service to be agile. We don't want service to be, again, a monolithic, a heavy lifter. So this helped us map it down into a smaller domain design, which came out to be great. So you can even read about domain-driven design books, which are outside available, and which really help you understand and improve your understanding on how to map domains with context instead of as a monolithic service. Moving ahead. So the first exercise that I told you was with a lot of people, like 10, 12 people standing in front of the board, like 8 hours a day, trying to put sticky notes, trying to take it off, trying to fight. This is how it's going to be. No, this is how it's going to be. But then we learned that once you know the exercise, it's easy to replicate. It's easy to do again, which is what I'm going to show you. This is what we did a small event storming sessions for another domain of ours, which is customer party, which was done at my desk. And it is all simplified because now I don't need those many number of sticky notes because I know what goes where. I know how things work. And if you see here, blue are the event, the orange are the context, and then the yellow here is the domain. So we were able to map out what's the core, what's the anti-corruption layer, which follow in the domain of the core, which follow outside the domain and have to be an external domain. And all of it came out to be very, very simple. And this was a great exercise and great learning. And this helped us take the knowledge back, and I even put it in projects now. So when I talk to people who have not been through these exercises, they are resistant on understanding and adopting it. But once you run them through once, you take them through the process, they say it's very simple. And it helps them change the mindset and think on the right direction. So this is what we want to do. We don't want to create those monolith service. We want to create microservices. We want to create easy services which can be published to production as soon as what we want. We want to start looking at things as features, not as products, because multiple features combine and give you a product. If you start looking at product, you start looking at 1,000 things, and then you start losing a few things in the middle.
I just want to add one thing. This, at the discussion level, what Ankit was explaining, was so much resistance for everyone in the room when you walk in, because the mindset is set of doing the things which we've been doing since 1800s, if I can say, but legacy was there. At this point, it's pretty easier said than done, but at that point, especially from the business, as Ankit said, this exercise involved a lot of people, especially for this domain, those who are consumers, and some of them are still in the room here with us, from our business units, from technology, from the developers. And that exercise really give you good fruits when it comes to doing the real work. When I say real work, means doing the development phase. So I can vouch for that, guys. Don't underestimate this practice or this thing when you just get the right involvement from your business. And then it will go much smoother once you finish this exercise. Go ahead. Sorry for your.
All right. And we had some amazing takeaways from Pivotal with the exercise we did with them. And also we've been using them since we have come back to Boston, like from Cambridge, not that far out, but still. And so if you see here, like we moved away from SOA into microservices, which was one of the key goals that was set in the beginning to achieve. We also knew how to do things right, which we always thought that what we knew was the right thing, but there are things that you gotta adopt, you gotta know, and then you always learn that there's always a better process to implement. There's always a better way to do things. I mean, I understand that everybody knows what's the best thing, but then sometimes adopting a new processes actually takes you to a different level to know how it's done right. We also, one of the biggest or one of the most essential parts that we learned from Pivotal also was treating path to production as a service. Now, path to production has always been a process. So a developer can, in isolation, build a service, and then taking it to production is like dealing with this team, dealing with that team, dealing with business, trying to review the code, trying to make sure all quality checks are there. Like 10 things that he has to take care of. And that's when people start losing their mind. But once you have a service defined, or once you start looking production or path to production as a service, it's something which you just define, and then it can be replicated for all the services which are built going forward. And it's easy, it's automated, and it's plug and play. I'll talk about our path to production, how it actually meant out to be, and how we made it plug and play later. And as I said, we learned about the difference between product and a feature, which was also a big add in our journey when going through Pivotal. And also, when we're trying to rebuild these services, or when we're trying to go and renegotiate something which we've already done, since we know how it's done, we immediately start doing it the way it was, which gave us a distinction between recoding and doing it right. So we came back not recoding, we came back doing it right. Because recoding is something that most of the people or most of the developers kind of make mistake of, okay, I'm rewriting this service. So if you're just rewriting what you have, then you might get few benefits from it. It's not going to give you a benefit in the long term. You might go back and change it again. And event storming and the domain-driven design architecture was also a great learning at Pivotal. Now, after all of this done, or I should say when all of this was done, we did not want it to leave the lift and shift. So what I was talking about is about do it right, because that's what we wanted to achieve with Pivotal. But lift and shift, we could not leave in isolation. We wanted lift and shift to also start achieving what we started achieving at Pivotal. So we, with the help and with the knowledge at Pivotal, mapped down our path and migration process, which you see here. So if you see here, we started migrating, okay, what do we need to do as a developer? And since it's lift and shift, so we tried to stick with what we already had, as we could not make a lot of changes, because to completely redesign, re-architecture, and re-engineer a service, you need to look at all the aspects. You need to look at the consumers, you need to look at the data source, and you need to look at the service. And since we were the ESP, so we were sitting in the middle of many systems. So there was only so much we could achieve with none of the other systems changing, and with we adopting what we had, and us adopting sooner than they are. So we came up with a migration process which would actually benefit both the things, lift and shift, and do it right. So if you see here, we have developers, and then we have a cycle of snapshot and release, which we wanted to enforce, because initially, when we started the project, the practice was, I know everything and I'll put it on, which means I know how to build the code and I can just put it to test. So we enforce a snapshot and release process where a developer would first check in the code into snapshot pipeline, which would deploy, do some code scan, do code quality check, do automated testing, and everything. And then once all of these have validated proper checks, we can then move it to a release pipeline, which would be your pipeline which then drives the code to production. So this helped us bifurcate what could go into production and cause issues which we were facing previously, and how we could save most of those issues initially, and then run a final process which is completely automated. One shout out I want to say is that, which I'll show you later also, that the snapshot and release pipeline or the process for snapshot and release till test. So this is development, this is deploy to dev, building your code, putting into a test environment, putting into a dev environment were exactly the same. The difference was that most of it in release was trying to be automated, and most of the snapshot was something you wanted to revisit and improve your release, because eventually you don't want to run two processes going forward all your life. You wanted to come up with one process which would actually benefit to you in the longer run.
So just a second on that. I just want to add that what you see on the screen is not for 80 different services. It was defined once and used again and again. That gives us a lot of velocity, and I'm going to talk about that too. But this doesn't happen in a day. The prerequisite for this process, or at this state, was the platform. We have a centralized platform team who produced the platform for us. So when we were doing this, the Concourse, the Pivotal, the scanning tools, all were available to us either through the tiles or through the service provided by us. We had our business unit aligned our timeline so that when the time is right, they can do testing. And we had a huge support from our executive teams that we need to make it happen. As you know, as I showed, it's a very wide organization. Until we have all these three things, the platform, the VUs, and the support, things cannot move fast. So what you see on the screen is a blueprint of how we migrated, but behind it is prerequisites of platforms in place, performing, and available to us. So at this point, what happened, Ankit, after this?
Once we had all the players we wanted to work with, and we wanted to achieve our final goal with the migration process, we just had to put the blocks in and achieve the target, and which we started achieving. So once we had the process initialized and plugged, and we started flowing our services to production or through the process, we did learn few things. We did change it. But then, since we paid attention to this as a service, we did not have to go back and look at it over and over again. It was kind of defined, and it was a learning for the next one and the next one. And if you see here, we have the business units testing it, we have the QA team testing it. So we onboarded all of these people in the very beginning, or when the process was defined, to not run into roadblocks, to not run into issues where you had to go back and reinvent the wheel. And now, since we started putting our services to production and this migration process was successful, it was time for us to celebrate. Which I think Sunil will talk about more now.
No idea what it is, guys. He claims everyone watches Office, so I assume everyone does. So whatever that is, I think I agree with the sentiment that yes, after we followed that process, so let's fast forward to where we are now. So it's easier said than done when we say, okay, we followed these things, platform was there, it's working. But as we heard again in some of the sessions, it's all about production, guys. If it's not in production, whatever you've done, awesome job, but what good it is. So let me walk you through this crowded slide a little bit before we go back to more stuff about what and how we have done is. So we achieved at this point across the board is that services are migrated to Pivotal platform, and they are in production and working and performing. We have CI/CD pipelines in place. I say pipelines, and we'll walk you through. We have few pipelines which we use, and we take using these pipelines all the way from dev to production and even to the disaster recovery set. We have that. The legacy service-oriented architecture had about a team of 40 people, guys, doing that, and at this point we have reduced that count to 8. Not counting our platform, because that comes as a service. That's a black box, which I love. I don't have to worry about how many people, what they do. When I say I need AI, they deliver it to me. So the support team, including developers, have been reduced to 8 from 40. 3 of them are offshore, 5 of them are on-site. So we are happily and fully functional supporting with these headcounts. So far, we are talking about a couple of $1 million a year saving, and it's going to go up as we streamline or fine-tune more and more. And we'll talk about that. What is in our so-called proverbial pipeline, what we want to do going forward. We have zero downtime now, unlike our service-oriented thing where we used to fail over from one data center to other, because now we are using blue-green deployment. Everyone knows what that is. We have included code scanning as part of our pipeline, the code quality as part of our pipeline. So developers have been automatically given guidelines, or kind of a check, if I can use that word, that what kind of code we are writing, how much testing we are covering as part of the TDD. So that's in place. Of course, because of the blue-green and because of our automation, the uptime has been maximized. That means we hardly see any service out of commission, whether we are doing. The build packs totally provides us the framework and runtime dependencies to run, for example, like apps like Java and others. We have, and I already mentioned, we have Concourse in place. So now I'm going to ask Ankit, because he's going to walk you through all these components which I mentioned included in our offering, what they are and how they are used, and what technology stack is in near future. So I press your button for the next slide, Ankit, so go ahead.
Right, so most of you know what all of these are, but we started developing in Spring Cloud, which was like the way to go. And we also started using Concourse for our automation. We started using Git for our code repositories. We were going on Pivotal, which was awesome because we were able to achieve a lot of things, auto-scaling, failovers, which was easy at Pivotal. We were using Kibana for logging. We were using New Relic for monitoring. And a lot of these things that you see here are like pretty generic. Apigee was one of the big gains because we were using web service security. So we had a web service security layer in front of our services and so on. Apigee made our life easier. And I'll talk about it later, how it is like in the blink of an eye, you can get an Apigee API these days for higher environments. We also are looking at Contrast, is a DAS tool. It's a dynamic security testing tool, which is great because we currently have to go outside to do penetration testing. And we wanted to get something in-house. We wanted to achieve this through what we already can and through automation so that we can put our code into production. And since we are evolving, we are trying to go through new products. What can give us the best for the buck? We have Black Duck, which gives us third-party library scanning, and it's still in phase. I'll talk about these two later. But most of the technology stack here is very simple. We're not really complicating by putting everything in. We just want to start with what's going to give us the best value, and then where we can go with them.
So one thing, what you see in the bottom two, they are not part of our production stack. Contrast and Black Duck, that's coming. We are doing POCs, and we are a regulated industry, as a lot of you know. We have a requirement of external pen test or penetration test. The Contrast will help us reduce that cycle time. If we test it in-house, we know if there are any vulnerabilities. Now, hypothetically, think we got 98% green. The external pen test should come back with 98% green. That means it's quickly done and we can move on. While today, we do our testing through the scanning we talked about using various tools. SonarQube is one of them. 45 is another one. I'm still stuck with Fortinet, guys. Sorry about that, my firewalls. Overall, these Black Ducks and Contrast of the world will help us reduce the cycle time. Ultimately, the goal is how fast we can market. It's not, and we are a regulated industry. There are requirements which we follow. There are compliance we have to do. So we work with our platform team to get these tools in for us, and then we follow the practice of getting an external pen test done by an external entity and get faster green light, if you can say. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also I want to say one thing, like these are not specific to specific people. Everyone knows all of these. We make sure everyone knows how to use Apigee, how to code in Spring, how to create their own pipelines, how to manage commits, rollbacks and everything in Git, how to create their own custom Docker containers if you already have a heavyweight so that your Concourse pipeline doesn't get stuck. And all of this makes our life easier because you don't have to go and train people. You don't have to go and rely on a person for something important. Everyone is ready, and they are working on all of these products as we speak. So, Sunil, back to you.
Yeah, and all of these things which you just saw on the screen, they are already available to us. None of the things, as you noticed, are not either in beta or anything which is, yeah, it will be available in November, December of 2020. We want to present today to you all is what is available, what you can use today if you want to. So there's nothing in there which is not available. As you said, the journey never ends. We still have a lot of things to do. We still have, this is just a milestone that we are in production and we are achieving what we started with. We achieved most of the goals, or pretty much all of the goals in one shape or other, but it doesn't look like a never-ending road, but believe me.
Is that the road you take to come here?
The road I take to come here. What's next? It means, okay, so we are in production. What else, you guys? What else we should be doing? Or what else we plan to do? Everything you see on the screen is not happening in a silo. We work with our platform team, with our business units, with our partners like digital engineering, which is part of our organization, which delivers a lot of standards and services for us. So we are looking into automate the schedulers. For example, these are 80+ services. Not every instance need to be up and running, guys. We are now in the world where we pay by the meter or pay by the drink. If the service is up, we are paying for it. So we are working on an automated scheduler to save cost or provide a better service for the developers. Saturday, Sunday, if no one is working, why should my dev and test need to be up and running and the meter running? Pivotal may not be too happy about it, but we will make sure. So that enhancement is coming. We are working with the platform teams to do that. Today we have a dedicated pipeline which does that on demand. We are also improving our monitoring and alerts. Ankit touched a little bit. We have a DAS tool, Contrast, in pipeline for us to review it, POC it, and see if we can add it to reduce the circle time for external pen test. It will not replace pen test. As I mentioned, it's a compliance or a requirement. We will be utilizing some black duck scans. All of us know how much open source we are using across the board, and black duck helps us to review or monitor the vulnerabilities, and that's a very important thing for us to do. Hopefully there is a max on automation, or at least improvement of automations, which we continue to do. And at the end, we also want to do a single pipeline to do everything. That's a goal we want to go as a next step. What does that mean? I do not have to have a separate DR pipeline, a separate dev to production type pipeline, or dev to UAT pipeline. Some of us who are practicing pipelines, I think they will correlate absolutely that it can become a challenge when you have multiple pipelines. So our goal, or one thing which we are moving ahead, is something look like this.
So this is Sunil's idea of pipeline.
That's a pipeline.
This is what he said when I told him about CI/CD pipeline. He showed me a picture of this, and he said, "This is what we're trying to achieve."
What is this? It's not a pipeline? I think that's a pipeline. Like it or not.
And then I told him no, and then he said something
no.
like this. So we just let it go.
It was a pipeline, believe me. I still stick to that.
But I just want to talk about the things that we were doing or what's next. So we are in process of achieving a lot of things, as what Sunil talked about. And it's important that we know our targets, which kind of change very fast. We know what to achieve, what to get out of our services, and what to give the best value to our business. So a lot of things that we have done or we are doing are in what's next. So we'll soon be having all of them. Now I'm going to just show you a picture of what our deployment pipeline looks like. So the one at the top left that you see here, or the top right, I should say, not top left, is the pipeline which I talked about, the snapshot and release, the replication of the code, which we currently are enforcing to make sure our developers are not really putting code with issues into production. We're making sure that our branch which takes the code to production is secure. So we are kind of enforcing none of the developers to put code directly into master. Master is protected. So anything that you do has to be enforced to be done on either the develop branch, which again, we're trying to enforce, but it's an ongoing process and fight, but to do it on a different branch in Git. So if you see here, we have build once and deploy many adoption. What we mean by that is we don't build the code every time we go to an environment. We learned this at Pivotal. If you are trying to do something twice or more than that, then you try to achieve it by not doing it the third time. So we're trying to deploy the code. We're using and leveraging our Manulife Artifactory to put in the code when required and pull it out when required. So if you see here in our build process, we build a code, we push it to Artifactory, and for deployment, we're pulling it out of Artifactory. So not even the first build is taking it from the build. It's taking out of Artifactory. We wanted to make sure we're trying to have all of these in repositories. The snapshot that we see here is not versioned. We don't want the developers to build 100 versions if they're trying to push out code with issues so fast. So only our release branch, which you see at the top, is versioned, which makes sense to us. You might change the process as per what kind of achievement and what pipeline you want to achieve through, but this is what we achieve. And if you see here in the process, once our service is deployed to test, we have automated smoke test, we have automated integration test, we have SonarQube scan, we have Fortify scan. And based on the success of those, only you can go and deploy to test, which means now we can give it to the QA team, which we onboarded in the initial process to go and test the service. And once all of this has happened, right now there's a process of manual code validation. So there's a person who's trying to validate the code manually, which we're trying to automate again by trying to find products which can do it for us. But that manual process causes the code to be checked in from develop to master, and then all of that is again automated. So at the top that you see in the release pipeline, the QA tests that QA is running manually in the snapshot are all automated, because that's what we want to achieve. The pipeline that you see below is a UAT pipeline, which is our pre-prod environment, which is a replication of prod. It's pretty simple. It's pulling the services out of factory and deploying it into our pre-prod environment. And then we have a smoke test to make sure the service is up and running. We don't want developers to go and click and send messages and try to mess up with data. We come up with new processes of trying to see if the service is up and running. Because it's pre-prod, the data is sensitive, and you cannot just go and test anything. So we come up with new processes or new ways to go and test the services that we have in pre-prod. And the same is replicated in prod, which currently I couldn't fit in here, and I did not want to make this smaller. So this is all of our pipeline right now, and this is used in all of our services. And I'm happy to say that our pipeline has been adopted in different business units as well. So a lot of people are using the exact same pipeline to achieve a targeted production, which is what we want to do. We don't want everyone to go and start creating their own pipelines, their own processes. If you have something, if they have an idea and we can change it or upgrade it, we go it and we adopt it. Now, this is about your code being deployed to production. So with our services deployed in PCF, we need a API in front of it. We need an API management tool for which we use Apigee. Now, creating an Apigee API takes time. Like, if you guys have worked on creating Apigee, you have to create policies. You have to map policies. You have to make sure your service connection is ready. And we use two flavors of Apigee. We use Apigee Edge and Apigee Micro Gateway. Edge for all external consumers and Micro Gateway for all internal consumers. So our platform team was able to create a resource which would help us automate it, and we implemented it. So if you see here, this is a plug-and-play pipeline which has very few configurations, which can be used by anyone to go and create Apigee proxies, products, and apps in test, pre-prod, and prod. Now this makes our life very easy. So this is, I would like to say, this is the power of concourse or automation, which really in seconds they get created. And if our consumer wants to change anything, we want to promote code to test or UAT or production soon, this helps us leverage that and reach our target as soon as it can. As Sunil said, we're trying to come up with one common pipeline. So we're trying to migrate this all within the process of creation of services. So soon we'll have Apigee proxies being created once the code is getting deployed, not as a separate pipeline. So our end goal is to have one fully automated, or as much as it can be automated, process which drives from once you're ready to push your code to the process where it goes to production and live for the customers. Also, since you're creating a lot of services and deploying them in PCF and you're trying to run them all the time, well, you're actually paying by the buck. So we came up with our own scheduler. So this scheduler is an 15-minute scheduler, which runs every 15 minutes, scheduling a job based on the config server that it's attached to. So it picks up the schedule of the service and it stops the services which are not required. So let's say I have services which are being tested only in the Eastern time zone. And while from 95 they get tested, after 5 p.m. they're just running and they're just idle. So I don't want people to go in and stop 80 services altogether. So I've put in a schedule where you can just go in, map the schedule, and it'll go and shut down the services and bring them up as you need. So this is helping us save a lot of money. And again, this is something we adopted and created. And this we have some mature solutions of it, and we'll be moving to them soon. So like, it looks a bit complicated, but then it's going to get simplified.
Again, guys, we want to converge all these pipelines into one. The reason for that is that makes our life not only easier, but a lot less complexity, and it is doable. That's part of our next deliverable. This is quick and dirty, if we can say that. And these, like for example, this, what you see on the scheduler, is a pretty costly, when I say costly in terms of a platform. So we are looking at other ways or other methods to schedule these kind of schedulers to get rid of or at least shut down the services when not in use.
Also, we work with different flavor of projects. Like, we mostly work with Spring, but we have few projects which are built in .NET, in Node. So, like, we had a project that came to us which was built in .NET, and I was able to successfully use the same pipeline which we're using for Spring, for .NET to deploy and take it to, I think
Steel toe.
yeah, it's not gone to production yet, but it's gone to UAT. So we try to come up with a process which helps everyone. We don't want like there should be a separate process for people who are using .NET. There should be a separate process for other technology people or other resources who are using different kind of development tools. So our aim is to come up with one pipeline which delivers for all. So that's currently in process, and hopefully we'll be able to map it out to production and use all the features that we need. So we'll have no technology agnostic pipelines going forward.
And our purpose today was to showcase what we have already in use or available today and give you a very small glimpse into what we are going to do beyond this state. But I don't think we need to recap the benefits of platform as such. We all know, hopefully most of us are using the platform. The scale up, scale down is available and is configured for us. Whenever a service goes down, we can scale it up automatically. If the performance means there's a lot more traffic coming, we can, without taking any outage, spin up another instance, which is automatically load balance. And so the regular benefits of platform exist underneath, so we did not capture that. We have 10 more minutes, so what I'm going to do is quickly recap, and then we open the forum for any specific questions we have. Just in a nutshell, this type of transformation we talked about, I feel, or a lot of us feel, is the no-brainer. This is not something which we need to sell to anyone, convince anyone. I think out of the gate it was pretty convinced. Every corporate, every business, I think that's required, and it's not a difficult sell for any of you if you guys are going in this direction of this type of journey. That being said, it's not easy. That's something which I want you guys to take. The biggest cost contains with these kind of transformation is culture, not the technology. The culture need to understand that we need to adapt to new ways, and you have to be changing almost on a daily basis. That's not part of the agile, that's part of the culture which need to be there. The tool's going to change, the practice is going to change. We cannot just sit tight and say, yeah, we achieved it, okay, we are done. No, the things like, in this conference only, we see a lot of new things which are coming in our way, and we can utilize that. I did not even mention Kubernetes, but that's coming for us too. We are not saying, oh, we're not going to do it because we are successful. So keep that in mind. Also, we have not hired any new talent for this project. I think it's a big deal, at least in my mind, from my perspective, it's a big deal that we trained our existing resources to deliver this kind of product. Not easy when I say it. We did took help from Pivotal. Yes, they kickstart us on a 12-week journey, but beyond that, is kudos to our engineers like Ankit and others who were able to pick it up, not only because they have to, I think it's mostly because they want to. And they are not sitting in a closed room, they all talk to each other and they see, wow, everyone else is doing and there's a value to it, why not I can do it? If Dick's Sporting Goods can do it, I can do it too. That kind of a thing. I'm not doing live demos, guys. So I think in a nutshell, say our journey was interesting, definitely bumps and bruises, but at the end, with the help of our platform, with the help of our BUs, with the help of standards created, and huge support from our executive team, we were able to migrate these set of services successfully onto Pivotal and under the microservices shape, if I can say. Do it right is definitely re-engineering, redesign, re-architecture. That's an awesome thing. We are still working on it when it comes to fine-tune. We are still, and we will continuously improve the automation, but at this point I'm very happy and glad to say that what we have achieved is benefit not only our own small little area or department, but other business units are also utilizing this, and we're going to spread it more as we build. Sharing is important, guys. Whenever you do something, make sure that you share with the rest of your organization or wherever. Make it public. Whatever you can. When I say public, that doesn't mean that go start sharing your passwords and things like that. But any of the code which we create, we make it available to the rest of the organization. So with that, I will open it for you guys. We have about 6 minutes. If you have any questions, please.
Yeah, so the question I want to ask has to do with just because there's confusion in the industry on how the terms microservice, API, and SOA relate. So I see a whole lot of transformation here on the delivery side of, we have something we need to build and downstream it goes.
Sure.
you, does that mean a small API? And then what really, sort of what does SOA mean to you? What
Sure.
did you get rid of since you're calling this from SOA
Mhm.
to
Okay.
microservices? What did you get rid of?
Sure. So just to repeat the question, if not this I'd heard, I think it's an excellent question that when we say SOA or a monolith, what does that mean to us? And then we say, yeah, we converted into the microservices, exactly what meant. Simplest answer for that is the SOA for us was a third-party vendor where we created the whole app into a delivery module, where if you say is give me a party information, and I want to change that party information, I need to then take the whole set of changes and make it, and that's not only time intensive, it means only you can use it. Rest of people still want that 3 fields in that party. In microservices, what we have done is make it more like a Lego blocks from today's thing. We created small functions or small APIs in the form of microservices where we say, if you need anyone, you could be the same consumer or a new consumer. If you want party information and you want address, name, and blah, you just send us a ticket and we will return you in the REST endpoint absolutely what you're looking for. And that's a small piece. If you come with a very different requirement, we may have another microservice, a small piece of API ready for you. 3 fields here, 2 fields here, you want 5, you connect it and we'll deliver to you, which was not the case in the SOA form where it was a monolith, third-party tool we configured. Now we have to go through their process, whatever they provide to us. We wrote every connectivity from scratch, guys, which is not the case in SOA, to your point. The tool provides you, if I have to connect to a database, they had their own driver. Here we have to either take ODBC or write something. That answers?
And we were trying to be 12-factor compliant too when we look at microservices. So which we were far away when we looked at when we were in SOA. And like the service size was really big, time to market was really large, and we did not have a lot of automation available, which always kind of put us in risk of not achieving business targets and like business capabilities that are required. So all of that was put into consideration when we thought of what we mean by moving from SOA to microservices.
So, I mean, on a related point, I was thinking along very much the same lines. Like, I'm old enough to remember when SOA itself was kind of a transformative idea, like, dare I say, revolutionary, and part of it involved breaking up your enterprise applications and making them more modular and stuff like that. I just found it interesting that you said that you had done that, but what you ended up with was a monolith. You know, I found that kind of interesting.
So all of it was, I would say, you cannot say everything was monolith, but then everything was pretty close to what a monolith would kind of be like. So there are ways where you do SOA right, there are ways where you do microservices right. Sure. So we tried to achieve SOA right. That was the goal when the team started working on the third product to make sure what we achieve is going to give us the value, and it was giving us the value.
Yep.
But then it wasn't giving us the value what we wanted to have in a longer run. It was giving us what we needed, but then we started seeing the shortcomings. We started seeing the downfalls. And that helped us, or that kind of initiated and triggered the process of moving away from SOA. So it wasn't really SOA not done right, but it was that it was time to move away from SOA into microservices.
I think it's the changing times too. The SOA was absolutely delivering what we asked it to deliver. I feel we have done a good job at that too, and we used it for 3 to 5+ years. And now the needs for our business units are changing. They want to be more nimble and agile, and their requirements are different. Now they're utilizing big data. And for that, they want to say, wait a minute, we want more information, and we want to be not waiting to do the whole 9 yards, which was SOA, to get something implemented. And the endpoints are more standard, at least the way we are doing our microservices. So by no means take it that the SOA was bad or it's not done right. I think if that meets your need, absolutely no need to change. But our strategic direction really guided us that the faster we can improve or faster we can deliver to our business units, it aligns better with the strategy. And that's what we are doing. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's nothing wrong in that. It's one of the main goals. There's never going to be only thing, but if it comes, you say yes.
No, it's one of the main goals. So do you think that you achieved it, and you can give us some idea?
Sure. The costing or when we looking for easy answer how you save money is on the two factor. One is soft cost, which means now we are becoming more available to other business units who can utilize these services. And the second one is with the automation, we were able to reduce a lot of consulting dollars, which we were having a lot of people doing patching, a lot of people writing codes. From 40 headcount coming down to 8 is a significant saving, guys. And this is real numbers. I'm not fudging or coming up. But with the caveat, yes, there is a platform head or platform cost. They must be investing it. And that's not going to be 32 people running my small 2080 services.
And just to give you an example, like most of our servers of the product we're using, achieving fault tolerance was there, but it wasn't quick. It was graceful, but it wasn't as graceful and zero downtime. So we were kind of running 2 instances to make sure they're load balanced, and in case if one goes down, we have the other one running. So we already had more than what was needed running all the time. So with moving away from that, gave us the flexibility of having a highly available environment, a DR which just stands up as soon as we want it to. So all of these things were taken into consideration when making the decision of moving away.
You mentioned your team size shrank to 8. You also mentioned the platform team existed. You also, when you were talking through some of the tooling, the changing
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that transition and who did what?
Sure.
As far as the dev team versus your platform team,
Mhm.
responsible for standardization, implementation,
Got it.
how that kind of evolved, and what challenges you had.
Sure, absolutely. Just to repeat the question, guys, I think it's an excellent question. Talk about who did what, just a thing. There's a development team, there's a platform team, and then your point is who makes sure the standardization is done. I mentioned a couple of names of the teams here, so let me start with that. The platform part is a black box to us, and that's kudos to a platform team or what deliver. When I need a new service to start, I send a quick request to my platform team, I need an AI, and only thing I have to mention is, okay, I'm working for blah, blah project, and that's our standard. They deliver me an AI in minutes or hours, not weeks and days anymore. So platform team is doing behind the scene the task of standardizing the tool pyramid, making sure that as much self-service as possible for us. If not, we are a snow shop, the service now. We send the ticket and it comes back pretty much because they don't have to create it, they have to press a button and do it. Outside that, when it comes to standard for security or APGs, we have another area we call it digital engineering. They have done an excellent job of creating these gateways for us, and we become their consumer. These are the pillars for us to generate that kind of delivery time fast. I don't have to wait weeks to say, okay, where is my VM in this case, or where is my instance? It's there. Platform team is doing work on that. How many of them? You know what? I don't care. I care about, here's my request, what it comes working for us. Apogee, security protocol, I care about my DE folks, digital engineering folks. They have done it, and we have automated creating the proxies. Now, standardization for us is still something which we have, as I said, it's a compliant industry. We have to go through our business unit security officer protocol. They do come and review through the audits and the process. That is a step which they perform, but embedded in our pipeline in terms of a IRA or risk assessment document. They clear it. If we are following the standard, they attach it to our pipeline or ticket, and then our platform team press the button and it gets delivered to the production. So standardization, the creation of various tools, and the platform, these are the 3 areas which makes us do this fast. If you guys are, depending on the size of the corporation and depending on your own structure, if all of these are in one place, you may find a little difficulty.
So just to add on that, initially or before this in service-oriented, we always had developers worrying about the path to production, worrying about the environment, worrying about the availability, whether the environment or the platform had capability of adding 5 more services and things like that. We wanted to get away from that. We wanted a developer to have the freedom of just development, go and build the code and put it out with the process there. And the platform team enables us to achieve that. So we don't have to worry about the platform. We don't have to go back and forth and try to negotiate, try to come up with what can be done, what cannot be done, because that's already available for us. So it makes our life really easy.
I think
And,
we're being kicked off looking at the signs. The next, we are here, either outside or please, that's our email address. You can email us anytime, or we are more than happy to talk to you. Thanks again, guys, for your time. I hope this helped. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.